On a bitterly cold December morning in Boston, the streets were nearly empty as icy winds howled through the city. Among the urban landscape, a lone figure shuffled along the sidewalk, her frail form bent against the biting cold. This was Eleanor Prescott, once a celebrated concert pianist, now a 75-year-old homeless woman fighting for survival. Eleanor's gloveless hands clutched a worn canvas bag containing her few remaining possessions. Her fingers, once nimble enough to dance across piano keys, were now stiff and swollen from the cold. As she walked, her stomach growled painfully, reminding her that she hadn't eaten in days. Desperate and exhausted, Eleanor spotted a warm glow emanating from a small cafe. The aroma of fresh coffee and pastries wafted out, making her mouth water. Gathering her courage, she pushed open the door, feeling the rush of warm air envelop her. The cafe was bustling with morning patrons, most engrossed in their phones or laptops. Eleanor approached the counter, where a young barista named Tyler eyed her suspiciously. "Can I help you?" Tyler asked, his tone sharp and unwelcoming. Eleanor's cheeks burned with shame as she stammered, I was wondering if you had any day-old bread or pastries you might be throwing out." Tyler's expression hardened. "We don't give handouts here. If you can't pay, I'll have to ask you to leave." Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes as she turned to go, the warmth of the cafe already feeling like a distant memory. But before she could reach the door, a voice called out, "Wait!" Eleanor turned to see a well-dressed man in his early 60s approaching her. This was Alexander Thornton, a renowned neurosurgeon and philanthropist. "Please sit with me," Alexander said, gesturing to his table. "I'd be honoured if you'd join me for breakfast." Hesitantly, Eleanor followed him, acutely aware of the stares from other patrons. As they sat down, Alexander ordered a full breakfast for Eleanor and a refill of his coffee. "Thank you," Eleanor whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You're very kind." Alexander smiled warmly. "It's my pleasure. I'm Alexander, by the way." "Eleanor," she replied, managing a small smile in return. As Eleanor ate, savouring every bite of the warm food, Alexander noticed a flash of gold at her neck. A delicate chain disappeared beneath her tattered coat. "That's a lovely necklace," he remarked. Eleanor's hand flew to her throat, grasping a small golden locket. "Oh, this. It's all I have left of my past life. It was my mother's." Intrigued, Alexander leaned forward. "May I ask about your story, Eleanor? How did you come to be in this situation?" Eleanor hesitated, then nodded slowly. As she began to speak, neither of them could have imagined how their lives were about to change forever. Eleanor's story unfolded like a tragic symphony. She spoke of her early success as a pianist, performing in prestigious concert halls across Europe and America. Her eyes lit up as she recalled the standing ovations, the rush of applause washing over her like a wave. "But then," she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper, "everything changed when I met Victor." Victor Blackwood had been a charming and wealthy businessman who swept Eleanor off her feet. They married quickly, and at first life seemed perfect, but Victor's true nature soon revealed itself. "He was controlling, manipulative," Eleanor explained, her hands trembling. "He isolated me from my family and friends, forced me to give up my career. I lost everything." Alexander listened intently, his heart aching for the woman before him. As Eleanor continued her tale, he found himself drawn deeper into her story. Years of emotional and financial abuse had left Eleanor a shell of her former self. When Victor died unexpectedly of a heart attack, she discovered he had gambled away their fortune and left her with nothing but debts. "I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to," Eleanor said, wiping away a tear. "And so here I am." As she finished speaking, Eleanor absent-mindedly opened the locket around her neck. Alexander's eyes widened as he caught a glimpse of the photo inside. "Eleanor," he said, his voice urgent, "may I see that picture?" Confused by his sudden intensity, Eleanor handed him the locket. Alexander stared at the photo, his face pale with shock. "This woman," he said, pointing to the image, Who is she? That's my mother, Evelyn, Eleanor replied. Why? What's wrong? Alexander took a deep breath, his mind reeling. Eleanor, I think we might be related. This woman, your mother, she looks exactly like my aunt who disappeared over 50 years ago. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. That's impossible, she whispered. But as Alexander began to share his family history, the impossible started to seem very real indeed. Over the next few hours, Alexander and Eleanor pieced together a family history long buried by time and secrets. Alexander's aunt, Evelyn Thornton, had vanished in 1965, leaving behind a devastated family and a host of unanswered questions. She was running from something, Alexander explained, but we never knew what. The police investigation turned up nothing. As they talked, the similarities between Evelyn Thornton and Eleanor's mother became undeniable. The timeline matched perfectly. Evelyn's disappearance coincided with the year Eleanor's mother claimed to have moved to the city. But why would she leave her family behind? Eleanor wondered aloud. Alexander shook his head. I don't know, but I intend to find out. In the days that followed, Alexander insisted on helping Eleanor. He set her up in a comfortable hotel and brought in a private investigator to dig deeper into their shared history. As they waited for answers, Alexander and Eleanor spent time together, forming a bond that grew stronger each day. A week later, the investigator returned with a thick file and a grim expression. The truth, when revealed, was more shocking than either of them could have imagined. Evelyn Thornton had fled an abusive marriage, fearing for her life and the life of her unborn child. She had changed her name and started a new life, never looking back out of fear that her husband would find her. That child, Alexander said softly, looking at Eleanor, was you. Eleanor sat in stunned silence, trying to process this revelation. Her entire life had been built on a foundation of secrets and lies. Yet as she looked at Alexander, she felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. As the dust settled from their earth-shattering discovery, Alexander and Eleanor faced a new challenge, rebuilding their lives as a family. Alexander, determined to make up for lost time, invited Eleanor to live with him in his spacious downtown apartment. At first, Eleanor was hesitant. I don't want to be a burden, she protested. Alexander took her hand gently. You could never be a burden, Eleanor. Your family. Slowly but surely, Eleanor began to adjust to her new life. Alexander introduced her to the rest of the Thornton family, who welcomed her with open arms. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt the warmth of belonging. But the transition wasn't without its challenges. Eleanor struggled with feelings of guilt and unworthiness, the scars of her years on the streets running deep. Alexander, recognizing her pain, suggested she see a therapist. It's not weakness to ask for help, he assured her. It's strength. As Eleanor worked through her trauma, she began to rediscover her passion for music. Alexander surprised her one day by unveiling a beautiful grand piano in the apartment's living room. I thought you might like to play again, he said, smiling at her astonished expression. Tears streaming down her face, Eleanor sat at the piano. Her fingers, once stiff and painful, found their old grace as they danced across the keys. The apartment filled with the soaring notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major Op. 9, No. 2. As she played, Eleanor felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The music flowed through her, washing away years of pain and loneliness. When the last note faded, she looked up to see Alexander watching her, his eyes shining with pride and love. Welcome home, Eleanor, he said softly. In the months that followed, Eleanor threw herself into rebuilding her life. With Alexander's encouragement, she began teaching piano to underprivileged children, finding joy in nurturing young talent. But Eleanor couldn't forget the struggles she had faced on the streets. She approached Alexander with an idea: to start a foundation dedicated to helping homeless individuals rebuild their lives. We could offer job training, mental health support, housing assistance, she explained excitedly. We could give people the second chance I was lucky enough to get. Alexander was immediately on board. Together, they established the Thornton Prescott Foundation, combining Eleanor's first-hand experience with Alexander's resources and connections. The foundation quickly gained recognition for its innovative approach to combating homelessness. Eleanor became a vocal advocate, sharing her story to raise awareness and challenge stereotypes. 1 year after their fateful meeting in the cafe, Eleanor and Alexander stood on a stage together, preparing to cut the ribbon on the foundation's first dedicated housing facility. As Eleanor looked out at the crowd, she spotted a familiar face. It was Tyler, the barista who had tried to turn her away that cold December morning. He approached her after the ceremony, his face etched with remorse. "Ms. Prescott," he said, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong to judge you, to treat you the way I did. Your story has inspired me to do better, to be better." Eleanor smiled, taking his hand. "Thank you, Tyler, but please call me Eleanor. We're all equal here." As they chatted, Eleanor felt a sense of closure. Her journey had come full circle, from desperation to hope, from loneliness to family. She looked over at Alexander, who was deep in conversation with some of the foundation's beneficiaries. In that moment, Eleanor realised that her mother's desperate decision all those years ago, to flee, to start anew, had set in motion a chain of events that led to this very moment. Out of pain and secrets had grown a legacy of love and compassion. Eleanor touched the golden locket at her throat, feeling its familiar weight. It no longer represented a past shrouded in mystery, but a future bright with possibility. As she joined Alexander, ready to welcome the facility's first residents, Eleanor knew that her true life's work was just beginning. The golden locket, once a symbol of loss and separation, now shone as a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, the possibility of renewal and redemption is always within reach.